Hello and welcome back to No Bullshit. Today we turn to talking about another female-led media project that is getting woke and going all girl power while they do it too. The CW channel recently released a trailer for their new Batwoman series, and people have had mixed reactions about it to say the least. Now, the CW is a channel that gets a pretty bad rap too, but I have to admit, there are some great shows and seasons to come out of there. Supernatural, for example, is a long-running cultural phenomenon of a show, which will be completing its 15th and final seasons starting this fall. I'm a big fan of them. And as for their superhero shows on there, they usually start off pretty good at the CW, but then they devolve into badness after too many seasons and episodes. Arrow, for example, was what started the whole DC TV universe there, and it certainly deserved to be the leader of the pack too. The first couple seasons of Arrow, maybe even up to season 3, they were really great, but I think problems started to arise when shows like this just go on for too long. And they have so many episodes per year too, usually like 22 or 23. The Flash is another one that started off great, but it's consistently gone downhill over the years too. And then there's also the Supergirl show, which, although it started on CBS, it now plays on CW too. But this is a show I never really got into from the beginning. Really, the only thing Supergirl has going for it is that they cast an actually hot chick for the lead role. But besides that, it turned out to be just as pro-feminist and social justice warrior as you would expect from a female-led project in current year. That brings us back to the recently released Batwoman trailer, because much like with Supergirl, this series looks like it's going to be hyper-focused on social and political issues, in the worst way possible. And to make matters worse, Batwoman doesn't have a stone-cold hottie cast as their main character. No. And while the actress Ruby Rose who's playing Batwoman, she's not necessarily ugly either, but she's just really going to be only hot for lesbians and guys who like butch, manly-looking chicks like Ruby Rose. And if you haven't guessed it already, Batwoman-looking butch isn't just a coincidence. This is clearly going to be a main part of her storyline if the trailer is any indication, because, well, they really focus on her being a lesbian almost the whole time. For example, this still from the trailer shows a flashback where Batwoman is kissing up on her girlfriend during their military training or something. This prompts their drill sergeant to ask if the girls have something they want to report to their squad. Obviously, this is a commentary on lesbian relationships, but also it's making a point about the military and their views on these kinds of relationships. Don't ask, don't tell was a former policy of the military up until about 2011, and this policy was basically saying it's okay to be gay, just don't come out and talk about it. Pretty old school and anti-PC, sure, especially in current year 2019, but it's not the end of the world either. It's not like they were kicking gays out or anything. I mean, I think most people would know all these butch women who actually join the military. Well, they usually end up being lesbians anyway. It's not like there's lots of sexy, feminine, stone-cold hotties like Supergirl joining the service. That's why in Supergirl's respective show, she's just some reporter or blogger or some shit. While in this one, back to Batwoman, she's a soldier with technology training. And this difference could actually be interesting and better too, but all the focus on lesbianism and bashing the military, that's already really turned me off. Now, to give the Batwoman actress Ruby Rose some credit, before we bash her too much here, she isn't the worst performer in the world. Rose has had some pretty legit performances in the third XXX movie, and she was also serviceable in John Wick and The Meg too. She's edgy, competent, and even humorous at some times, but problems do arise when you start to see her in this new trailer, trying to pull off this main character Batwoman. Really, Ruby Rose often looks way too skinny and small to be a convincing standalone superhero. Perhaps she's more fitted to be a sidekick like Robin, but oh well. Now we got to deal with her as Batwoman in this upcoming show. And it's not just the look and lesbian stuff that makes people question Ruby Rose as Batwoman either. This 3-minute trailer, which, by the way, that's way too long for any trailer, especially a TV show. And it also has some real groaner lines in there coming from our new lead hero. Here in this elevator shot, after being told she's not allowed to go into this area, Batwoman says, "Oh, you know, I have this thing about rules." And I know that's supposed to sound badass or something, like she doesn't follow the rules, but it comes off as weak and childish to me. Don't know if this is all Ruby Rose's fault either. Could be more of a writer or director issue, but regardless, this is a low part for the trailer, surely. It's like they're trying to tell you this character is a badass who doesn't play by the rules, instead of just showing you that. Show don't tell is a classic rule of thumb for any visual medium like TV or film, but it looks like Batwoman isn't pulling that off already. Another groaner line comes a little later too. When Batwoman reaches the Bat Cave, she sees an old Batman suit hanging in the case. She then turns to the black assistant guy there, who seems to be keeping up with things, and says to him something like, "This suit needs work." The guy then says it's perfect, with a little smirk afterwards, but Batwoman responds saying it will be once it fits a woman. Yikes. I could still feel the cringe coming off of that line after I watched it, and I've I've only seen this trailer once. And this really reminds me of one of the worst things these pro-women projects have going for them lately. They're being way too adversarial towards men. Female characters like Batwoman, Supergirl, and Marvel's Captain Marvel, well, they don't like to stand alone and make themselves known for their own merits. No, their modus of operandi is to try and get on top by bashing someone else, namely men, and they do it every chance they can get. Like, wouldn't it be cooler if Batwoman just stood up on her own merits, with her own character and special skills or something? She could be a badass in her own right and maybe even excel in some areas over the original Batman, like say, she's more acrobatic or better with tech knowledge, like what this character's background appears to be. This brings me to another issue with these female DC heroes to begin with. They're all just spin-offs of more popular and better male heroes. Supergirl is a girl version of Superman, and Batwoman is a female version of Batman, obviously. So, right from these characters' inceptions, they were already sort of knockoffs. At least with Captain Marvel, she's kind of her own thing, somewhat. Not to give her too much credit since her story can be seen as derivative too, but at least she's not a girl version of someone else. And then, as if spinning off and using a male character's popularity to get your project started isn't bad enough, well, then these girls have to slam their male counterparts. Like what we're seeing with this woke, dumb as hell Batwoman trailer. Seems rather disrespectful too, if you ask me, especially considering these characters wouldn't even exist if it weren't for the guy ones paving the way, and because of their name recognition, like of Batman or Superman. Aside from Wonder Woman or maybe Catwoman, there's basically zero female heroes in the DC universe that people would care enough about to watch a show starring them. There's Black Canary, Starfire, Hawkgirl, Mira, Big Barda, and Power Girl. Come on, I think you get my point already. Basically, this girl power bullshit is getting old, especially when the characters trying it are using the bashing of men as their way to look cool and woke. And this male bashing is especially hypocritical coming from characters like Batwoman, whose whole premise and franchise is based on an original male version, who paved the way for them since the beginning. Speaking of Batman spin-offs, another thing I'd like to point out here is how old this whole Bat family stuff is getting lately. I mean, Batman and Robin is one thing. They're a classic partnership who pairs well together. Alfred is also a well thought out, loyal servant to this dynamic duo, but once you get past that, things start to get a little hairy. Batgirl might be as far as I could really go, but that's only the beginning of the Bat family. Now they've got characters like Orphan, Gotham Girl, Oracle, and the Signal, and these at least have their own unique names, but Batgirl and Black Bat, Batwing, and today's topic, Batwoman, well, sounds like they aren't even trying to come up with their own names. And essentially, the Bat family continuing to expand really isn't necessary. Bruce Wayne as Batman is an interesting character enough in its own right, and while I don't mind him interacting with more and more characters, and even teaming up with and creating other hero counterparts, but needless to say, the need and want to expand the so-called Bat family is getting a little out of hand, and it used to be mostly within the comics too, but now, with this new trailer and series for Batwoman coming out, I can't help but worry more of these minor Bat characters are going to get undeserved attention, which will further dilute the good Batman name. But back to the Batwoman trailer some more now, before we wrap things up. Did I mention how severely disliked this video is on YouTube right now? Check out this pic. Ouch. That is not a good or promising ratio for an upcoming television series. People will undoubtedly watch it though, and Batwoman will likely get multiple seasons on CW too. All of those DC Comics shows do incredibly well on there, despite the quality for some reason. And good for them too. I'm not here to knock a company and crew making some money, but did they really have to do it by being feminists and social justice warriors? I don't think so. And there's also this false premise that they're going with here, acting like this is the first gay comic book character ever on TV, when really, DC's Legends of Tomorrow has had lesbian heroes on it for years now, and that show's on the same channel too. So I guess Batwoman is the first lesbian leading lady in a comic book TV show on her own, but is that really saying much at this point? They're making this category so specific it's almost not even worth mentioning. I mean, I wouldn't even say this is the first lesbian hero either, since the movie Atomic Blonde starring Charlize Theron came out 2 years ago in 2017. But yeah, like I said before, the category they're going with here is lesbian leading lady comic book based show on TV, and I think that's a goddamn joke. Finally, let's talk about the look of Batwoman here again one more time before we go. As I mentioned before, Ruby Rose comes into this looking like how she normally does. Short hair, skinny, small, and pretty butch. Nothing wrong with that either, but not my cup of tea as well. Next, when she first puts on the Batman suit, she actually looks pretty cool in the trailer. Granted, that's mostly because she looks exactly like Batman, but with boobs instead of pecs, but those kind of look the same. Regardless though, the costume is okay at first, but then she seems to get mad since people just think she's Batman, so that's when Batwoman puts her whole red spin on this thing, making the Bat logo red, wearing bright red lipstick, and even adding a red wig on top that looks very cheesy and over the top if we're being honest. It's also kind of weird to me too, since Ruby Rose without the costume is so butch and manly, but for some reason when she's Batwoman and fighting crime, she wants to be more feminine. Doesn't make much sense to me. Maybe she's trying to hide her identity more or something. That could be a reasonable excuse, but it's not really a good one for me, and it doesn't solve this whole issue. At least the Batwoman in the comics also looked feminine when she had the costume off. Makes much more sense than this whole Ruby Rose. She becomes this sexy feminine chick with long hair and lipstick. Kind of contradictory, and I think the CW did this out of desperation because they were trying to fill out too many roles, and also they wanted to have their cake and eat it too. You see, they wanted Batwoman without the suit to be this super lesbian, pro-girl power character, but then with the costume, they still wanted to go with the traditional feminine Batwoman look from the comics, which, in my opinion, doesn't work too well with the super lesbian Ruby Rose. What do you guys think? Was this Batwoman trailer too woke? Will the series be as SJW as it looks? And what do you think about Batwoman being butch without the costume, but feminine with it on? Comment your thoughts on everything below, and thanks for watching No Bullshit. Hit that like button if you enjoyed this video, and we'll see y'all next time.